Hello, church. Welcome to another episode of Living by the Book, our pastor's vlog. Today I have a topic that I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on. I was reading a sermon by Jonathan Edwards called The Preciousness of Time. And in this sermon he talks, it's something that only Jonathan Edwards could do. He goes on for, probably an hour's worth of time just talking about time from one verse in the Old Testament. But he likens time to the most valuable resource in the world because he says it's the only resource that you can never get more of, right? Every second that goes by is a second lost that you can never get back. And I was just thinking about that concept, especially in light of the fact that many of us have more free time than we're used to right now because of the pandemic and because we're working from home, or maybe someone's been furloughed, or so I've just been thinking about time and how as Christians we're called to redeem the time, and what does that mean? So I'd love to hear your thoughts first of all on how should a Christian think about how they use their time, and then I want to get into more practical matters of okay, well, what about recreation? What about just fun activities that aren't necessarily of clear spiritual benefit? Are those wrong, or are those okay? How do those fit into the Christian life? So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on the preciousness of time and how we use it.
Well, I would agree with Edwards. I think that it is something that needs to be redeemed and utilized wisely. I think that the notion of everybody sitting 24 hours a day and reading the Bible or memorizing Scripture or praying is not consistent with what we read in the Scriptures, what we see. In Ecclesiastes says there's a time for everything, a time to work and a time to play, a time to lie down, a time to rise up, all those kind of things. Although I do believe that in 20th or 21st century America, we have so much recreation and leisure to us. It used to be that we worked 6 days a week, and basically we saw our work time from sunrise to sunset. Mm-hmm. So we got more time for leisure as the days got shorter. That as the evenings got longer, you'd either go to bed earlier or you would burn the candle. Right. And sometimes at both ends, morning and evening, you get up early, and that's what burning the candle at both ends refers to. You do it in the evening, you do it in the morning, before sunrise and after sunset. But I think that there's an old saying that my dad used to always say. He said, "I have all the time I need to accomplish everything God intends for me to do today. I don't have a lack of time. I have the time I need." The problem is the prioritization of how we utilize that time. And there are a lot of things we choose to do. And there are a lot of things that we should do, and sometimes they don't overlap. Right. So we're doing things we shouldn't be doing because we want to, as opposed to doing the things we should because they're hard. There's a book that's been written not too long ago that do hard things, and
sounds like an encouraging book.
And do them first. I mean, people who are really successful recognize that and I read one book one time where he says, to be effective, find the least desirable thing that you want to do in a day and do it first. Don't try. It's like eating a dinner plate. You don't eat dessert and then eat your starches, right? And then maybe say, okay, I eat my veggies, and I don't have any room left for my meat. Right. So vegetarians would think that's a great thing, but I mean, generally speaking, the protein you need and everything. You obviously have to pace yourself and eat your food appropriately, so that maybe dessert is the thing you don't have time for. And I think that we need to be careful. I do believe that we have so much leisure opportunities, from gaming systems to television programs to movies on demand on Netflix or whatever. You can watch hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of options as to what you can watch. You have games that you can play, and tons of time are dumped down games. And wasted with games. I think what we need to do is again recognize that we are servants of Jesus Christ, and as slaves of Christ, our time is not our own; it's His, and therefore we need to really prayerfully consider, what would God have us do? What would God have me do today? And I think we need to plan. I think part of the reason there's so much wasted time is because there's so little planning, both long range, medium range, and short range. I think that there needs to be care given to what do I believe God would desire for me to do, and then you would pursue that. I think children need to have chores they're responsible to do, and they don't get playtime unless those chores are done.
Right.
And we begin to teach children the priority of productivity in things that ought to be done before we have the opportunity to indulge ourselves into recreational or leisure pursuits.
Right.
So your leisure ought to be the stuff that you have at the end of the day, not in the middle of the day or whatever.
Right.
You utilize your time wisely.
Right.
I've seen the illustration before of a ball jar, and you have an assemblage of things that you have to fit into that ball jar.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it in the right order, you're not going to get it all in.
Right.
So you have a bunch of ping pong balls and a bunch of marbles and sand.
Right.
So those three objects, you got to get all of the sand in, all the marbles in, all of the ping pong balls in.
Yeah.
Well, if you put the sand in first and the ping pong balls, or the sand in and the marbles in, you're not going to get all your ping pong balls in.
And the sand maybe being the easiest, the smallest pieces, easiest to do. Right.
Maybe the funnest thing to put in or whatever. You can. So you have to put your ping pong balls in first. And then you put your marbles in and allow them to find
filter in gaps and spaces,
and then you put your sand in. And if you do it in that order, everything fits in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we have to recognize that with the amount of time that we have in a day, we have to fill that time. Time is like the ball jar. You have so much of it. There's so much capacity.
Right.
And so time is like your ball jar. And then your activities are like the sand, marbles, and ping pong balls. Ping pong balls are the duties, the things that you ought to do.
Right.
The marbles are the lesser priorities, but things that would be nice to do. And the sand would be the recreational things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
not necessary, but they'd be enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can get it all in.
Right.
If you take it in the right order. And you know the thing is that people just fill their jar with sand. That's all. These ping pong balls accumulate. Over days and days, and now you have so many ping pong balls, you just get frustrated and discouraged and even depressed because you've got so much you have to do. And if you had just done them, you know, as you go, life would be so much more fulfilling and orderly.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's that need to recognize that time is precious and it ought to be used wisely and prayerfully and dutifully. You do your duties first. Yeah. And then the things that are kind of a little more fun, and then the leisure activities are last. I enjoy at the end of the day sitting down and watching the news on TV or watching a select program. You must be selective because there's not a lot that's really healthy for me spiritually to watch, but there are some, and I watch those, or a movie here and there that I've had recommended. And so I can do that. I enjoy working with wood and yard work. I enjoy doing that. Those are, you know, those are things that I enjoy filling my day with. Reading I enjoy doing. So, you know, I have all kinds of hobbies that I never get to though. Right. You know. Right. Coin collection and, you know, those kind of things. Yeah. Philately. Which are stamps and different things. You know, I have all those kind of things started. Sure. But I don't get to them very often because they're really the smallest grains of sand.
Right. Lowest priority. Yeah. Well, maybe real quickly, you know, one thing I'd like you to talk a little bit more about is, you know, the nature of leisure and recreation. does someone's hobby have to have some sort of spiritual benefit? Certainly, things like video games and watching sports can't just be grand wastes of time. But does that mean that they're inherently wrong? Like, how does someone find the balance, right? Should it be something where, I've done everything I need to do. I have an hour left. It'd be nice to watch a program, but shouldn't I just read my Bible for another hour? What is the place of just pure leisure?
Well, I think that is all dependent upon a person's spiritual maturity. For a person who is not very spiritually mature, if you can get them to read their Bible for 15 minutes, it's a major victory.
Sure.
It's a victory.
Sure.
And so you pat them on the back, you say, "Attaboy, doing well."
Yeah.
Or "Atta girl,
yeah.
You're doing well."
Yeah.
But you expect them to graduate from the milk to the meat.
Right.
And to spend more time studying Scripture, meditating on Scripture, memorizing Scripture, and having times to do that. But I think there isn't an appropriate legalistic spend an hour and you're godly.
Right.
But what's your heart calling you to do? And I think you need to prayerfully consider, what would God have me to do? And very often, the more spiritually mature you get, the more frustrated you get that you don't have more time to do it. And so for them, if they have a free hour, they're going to use it that way.
Yeah.
They're going to fill it up with, I get to read my Bible for another, or study, or chase down this verb, or whatever
because
it may be.
They'd rather do that than something else.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's a mark of spiritual maturity.
Sure.
Not that a person who reads a book for an hour that's a novel or watches a baseball game is spiritually immature because they want. No. You can't expect 24 hours a day to be spiritually.
Right.
There is a time to work and a time to play. That's what the Scripture says.
Yeah.
There's a time to do that.
Right.
The problem is when we so magnify the time to play that we don't do our work.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about being productive economically in working, and we can get into the biblical philosophy of work. But I'm also talking about the work of spiritual cultivation.
Right.
That's work.
Yeah.
It's hard to exercise the discipline necessary to grow spiritually, and so there's a time to work, there's a time to play. And I think that people are going to see that sorted out if they're just sincere and genuine before the Lord, and are praying that God would help them with their time management.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. Church, I hope that little discussion has blessed you. In the interest of time, I think we'll stop taking and answering questions, but I do think it gives us a lot to think about. And our prayer is always is that you would be maximizing your time for the glory of God, both in your study, in your work, and also in your recreation and your leisure. I think, as 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all to the glory of God. And that's our prayer and hope for you.
Let me just read these 3 verses in Ephesians 5. Therefore be careful how you walk, not as unwise men, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. So then, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. That's how we approach the issue of time.
Yeah, really helpful. Church, I trust that this has blessed you. I pray that you use your time wisely this week, recognizing that the days are short. So we will see you next week on another edition of Living by the Book.